Good evening, everyone. We will call to order the April 4th study meeting of the Livonia City Council. This is the 1940. I'm looking at the wrong thing altogether. No, excuse me. Sorry about that. The agenda for the 1943rd regular meeting, which is a voting meeting, will be set in part by tonight's study meeting. There are no council absences at this time. We have a few members here with us in the audience. I will start off with my colleague, Mr. Donovic. Will you be offering a prayer or a pledge of allegiance?
The
sir?
pledge, Mr. President. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Donovic. At this time, we will go to audience communication. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda this evening? There appears to be no audience communication at this time. Is there any comments or communications from the council at this time? I see none as well. At this time, we will go on to the agenda. This is the study agenda. We have 5 items on the agenda this evening. Number 1 is a request to approve an increase in compensation for the deputy treasurer and deputy clerk, coming to us from our city treasurer and city clerk to increase the compensation to be more comparable with positions in neighboring communities. Ms. Scheel, our city treasurer, would you like to address this matter first?
I would. Good evening, President Jolly, Vice President Toy, and all members of the City Council. As you stated, I'm Linda Scheel, the City Treasurer, and along with our City Clerk, Susan Nash, we are asking for your concurrence with a salary adjustment for both the Deputy City Clerk and the Deputy City Treasurer, based on several factors that were listed in your cover letter and information included with your package, with one of the listed factors being the fact that comparable salaries for the same positions in nearby and comparable communities are significantly higher than salaries in Livonia. Considering all the factors and knowing the pivotal role that these deputy positions play in the day-to-day operations in each of their respective departments, the Personnel Review Committee has recommended, and the Mayor supports, the request that the Council approve an increase in compensation for these positions. Clerk Nash and I would be more than happy to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Mr. Bart?
Linda, first of all, thank you for the very complete, very thorough, as I was reading through this information, Linda and Susie, I assume you both had a role in this. Sorry, I'm talking to Linda, but this was just really well put together, and as I was reading it, it was like answering the questions that were coming to mind as I had the questions. So thank you. I don't have an issue with this. I think you've stated your case clearly. I think it makes sense. My one question is, obviously we've dealt with a number of salary raises over the last number of months, and different times the question has been asked, can't we just handle these all at once? Can you help us understand, you even reference in here the citywide comparison that was done. Can you help us understand why this is just coming to us now and why it hasn't come previously?
Well, this is coming from the city clerk and myself. So we are, the deputy treasurer and the deputy clerk are appointees of each of us. And so we are the ones that answer for their salaries. And we've been, as our salaries are set by the LOCC, the same as your salaries are. And so as we've seen some increases come in for us, the deputy clerk and the deputy treasurer's salaries have only been adjusted according to what the union's salaries are. So we've seen a bigger disparity in their rates, and we wanted to bring them in line with what the comparable salaries are for their positions for neighboring communities.
Okay, and and that's compelling what you provided, and that does make sense. So what you're saying is there's, what differentiates this from the others is the fact that this comes from your office. You have the authority to do this.
This comes from our office. They are our appointees.
Got it. I'd offer this for approving for consent if there's no objection.
Sure.
Ms.
That's okay.
McIntyre beat you again, Ms.
I
Howard.
know.
I miss, maybe if you were sitting, no.
On your lap? No.
I certainly agree with my colleague, Mr. Barr, and I'd just like to make a comment on the comparables for these. These are directly comparable. And a lot of the, or I shouldn't say a lot, but a number of the requests for adjustments that have come to us where they are ostensibly comparables, you don't know what the jobs entail, right? You know, Chief of Staff, Director of Administrative Service, Community Resources, right? Because those vary from city to city or community to community. These are directly comparable, and there's also an established market for people with these skills.
Yes.
And if we don't compensate these positions well, we are not going to be able to continue to fill these positions with top-tier talent as we've been able to. So I think this is, again, extremely well done. But this is one where we're very much subject to market forces and the ability to compare directly with other communities and comparing on, similar revenues and similar population. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Toy?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Linda, could you help me out, or Madam Treasurer, dollars, expenditures, where is it coming out of?
Just coming out of our budget that we have planned. So
Okay.
we will make sure that we, if this does go through, that we will plan accordingly for other budgeted items to make sure we keep enough in our budget to cover this.
Great. I know that we've gotten a lot of one-time money, and that concerns me as we move, in directions with councils that'll come after us. And not that nobody's not deserving of more money in this world. And I think it's a small price we're giving them, as quite frankly, for what we're doing. And I commend you both for recommending that, and each new treasurer, each new clerk brings in their own people. I don't think there's gonna be any shortage of people that wanna work within those jobs. And the skill set, as my colleague pointed out, is so crucial and so important as well, because elected people, and after serving there, don't always have the skill set that meets the needs of a municipal government kind of position like that. So, somebody like Domich that has been there since, I think Harvey Mulkey was buried, he's got those skill sets so much that, she could probably run the whole city hall. And the thing that concerns me, I think that was pointed out earlier, is, and this doesn't pertain to you because you're your own administrators, as you've pointed out, but what concerns me is, as we look at all these salaries around the city, I'd like to see a comprehensive plan when it comes to us, so that we kind of know what we're spending and, not that people don't deserve it or, that we shouldn't consider it, but maybe, larger, picture, if you will, for it, because I think that's really important. I know, the cable guys have been without an increase for some time, that department. Different departments approach us, and that's not your problem, that's ours as elected officials, that one of our sole responsibilities is the budget. So I appreciate you coming in tonight. I congratulate both your deputies if this vote goes through, which I'm sure it will. I wouldn't bet on that, but no. In all seriousness, thank you very much to both you and Clerk Nash. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else from the council? Ms. Nash, would you like to say anything or no?
I think this is very well deserving. And Ms. Sheila and I have talked about this for a while, as obviously she can understand on the treasurer side, I understand on the clerk side. And it's a case of looking at a position, not necessarily a person, and we're trying to make sure these positions are taken care of and that we respect this position. These are highly respected positions that require a lot of work and a lot of detail. And I think I'm very appreciative that it passed with PRC and hopefully with council that we can compensate the deputies a little more.
Thank you. Any audience communication? I see none. Ms. Nash, please take, oh, no, I'm sorry. This is on the consent agenda. We're all set.
The
We're good.
emergency
Thank you.
clause.
Thank you very much.
There's no roll. Listen. I just like saying those phrases so often. All right, item number 2, request to approve amendment to the agreement with Simple Recycling from the Department of Public Works to modify their program collection from a regular basis, that is a weekly curbside collection, to a scheduled porch pickup. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. Jacob Rushlow, Assistant Director of Public Works. Simple Recycling is requesting this amendment to the agreement that was put forth back in August of 2019 essentially to modify their program collections from a regular weekly curbside collection to now a scheduled porch pickup program. This program would continue to be offered to our residents as it is now at no cost, and the agreement would continue through the life of the original agreement, which would expire in August of 2023. Our recommendation is that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute this amendment to the agreement with Simple Recycling for the collection of soft recyclables as defined.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bart?
Through the chair to Jacob, now that this is going to this type of approach, I mean, there's plenty of other organizations that do this type of service. I don't think council approves those. What is unique about this that requires council to deal with this at this point? Is it just because they're changing from what they'd done before?
Correct, yeah, so in the existing agreement that we have with them that was set back in 2019, it states how they're operating, how items are collected. Previously, they were put in those orange or pink bags, put out at the curbside and collected on your normal refuse pickup day and recycling pickup day. Now, you go on their website, you see available time slots, you pick a date that you want it to be collected, you put it out on your porch the morning that it's to be collected, and they come and pick it up. Like you said, there are other organizations that do almost that exact same process.
Yeah, and just for the residents' sake, for anybody that might be watching, I actually have used this service since they made this change. I'm not sure when they actually did it, but when I went to put a bag out, what was now the old system, and then it sat there for a couple days, I went and looked up and realized how they were doing it, and it was very, very smooth. I think this is an improvement for the city. I think this also alleviates the concerns of some of my colleagues that have had on this in the past. So I don't want to speak for them, but just from what I recall that, I think this is good for everybody. And what I just want to say for the residents is just a reminder, and this service, I think is an asset for our community. And in my case, where I find value in it is for those clothing items that are not in a condition to, in good faith, donate to a place that's going to resell them. And I keep one of these bags in the basement, and as it just slowly fills up, and it eventually got full, and they came and picked it up. It's really a great service. So I encourage our residents to go. I think it's our city refuse site or the recycling site is where I found the information, and it's all there. And I definitely support this. I'll offer an approval for consent if there's no objection.
Sure.
Ms. Toy?
Thank you. If I may, I think Mr. Rushel. Mr. Rushel, how do residents know how to get the bags? Are they responsible for educating the resident? Are we going to put out some kind of something on this? Because it's so environmentally friendly as well that, I think it behooves us to let people know about the changes.
Yeah, certainly. Excellent question and point to bring up. So, like we did when we kicked off this program a couple of years ago, we'll be setting out and working with the administration to put out some social media posts about the changes, how to do it. The company, Simple Recycling, has some additional kind of promotional literature and things that they'll be sending to us that we can use and modify their language as we see fit to use for social media or website posts to have reminders like, hey, springtime is approaching. It's a good time to clean out your, unwanted used materials and the like to donate or recycle. So we will certainly be doing that and pushing the word out, assuming this is approved, to make sure that everyone's aware of that change and how that's being done.
Does that include shoes as well?
It does, yep.
Soft shoes or leather shoes?
Any kind of
Tennis
shoe
shoes?
is acceptable, as well as other things like Councilman Barr had mentioned that are not something you typically donate to a Goodwill or Salvation Army type
Sure.
reuse facility. Is things like that aren't collected there, like rags that you may use for even cleaning and things like tattered, torn things that you wouldn't donate. Badly stained materials, even stuffed animals was a big one. Stuffed animals are something that's hard to get rid of and recycle, that end up in the trash a lot. They can take them through this program, and they will use those fabrics for things like insulation and recycling that way, reuse that way.
Can I ask you, where are they located? I mean, where could we see a process of how they break that down?
I know their website had a few video links on there that showed that process. And you may recall too, this company, Simple Recycling, does the collection side of this whole process. They don't necessarily do the recycling
Right.
and production work themselves.
Okay.
They sell those materials to companies that do that type of work.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McCullough?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to Mr. Rushlow. If I'm looking at this, we are, with this addendum, we're looking at, on item number 9, we're going to go from, I think, a penny per pound now to a nickel per pickup. Is that correct?
That is correct. That was their request for a change.
And then, do you have any information on, for one, I think that this is an incredible program, I do. I think this gives our residents a great way to be sustainable and to have an avenue for recycling. Do you have numbers, or is there a chance to have any numbers provided before for the next regular, just to see what our snapshot is of current residents using this
Yeah,
service?
absolutely. So we do get monthly collection reports from them that show tonnage, and I think with the new change, they're starting to show just number of pickups, and then there's an estimate of tonnage since they're loading it differently and how it's being collected. They're not weighing every time they go to somebody's porch like they were with the curbside stuff. But we can
Yeah, and
certainly
that's not
provide
for
that.
anything decision. I mean, I'll keep this on consent. I just think that, alluding to what Councilwoman Toy brought up is, I don't think many residents know that this exists. So that should be our first and foremost, to measure exactly, benchmark what we're doing now, and, with our avenue on social media and LivoniaTV, maybe even do a little something on this and try to bump that up. Thank you.
Mr. Donovan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just briefly, as my colleagues have expressed support for this, I think this is an awesome program on their website, simplerecycling.com. Super quick and easy to schedule a pickup with your information. And if you aren't tech savvy necessarily, there's the phone number, and it says you can call them and schedule a pickup time. So I do think it's a really great program. I'm happy to see that they're doing the more scheduling pickup as opposed to kind of inefficiently driving around neighborhoods and looking for an orange bag. And you can go right to the website and order your bags as well. And I know for some of our residents that may not necessarily get out as often, this is a nice program because they don't, to your point, have to go to the Salvation Army or other sorts of stores similar to that. They can just do it right from their front porch. So I'd like to commend the DPW staff and everyone that's worked on this. This is a pretty good program. Thank you, Mr. Rushlow.
Anybody else from the council? So I'm going to ask that this be put on regular, and I'm going to say why. At this point, this is at least the second time that this has been amended from it originally having come to us. I question at this point whether the nominal amount of money that comes into the city is worth the time and the effort of the professionals on the city side who are involved with this. This is a for-profit business that is piggybacking off city communications, city man-hours, city time, and to be quite honest with you, is in some ways in competition with local nonprofits such as the Vietnam Vets, the Purple Heart, and others who do a very similar service here. The one thing that this had going for it coming in originally was that it would be a standardized pickup, just like the garbage, the trash removal, that is. At this point, I see very little, if any, difference whatsoever from those nonprofits who provide the same work. And not only am I going to take this off consent and ask that it be put on the regular, I'm going to ask that a motion be put in the study packet to terminate this agreement altogether. I don't understand why we're doing this. I mean, your time's important, Mr. Bernier's time is important, and who's footing the bill for people to review these contracts, to have a nickel come in everyone? I mean, I understand the positive things that my colleagues have shared here, but I don't understand why we're involved in this as a city. So I'll say that, and I think, Ms. McIntyre, are you indicating you want to speak? Go ahead.
You certainly, as any council member can, as you know, can have something taken off the consent. Textile waste ending up in landfills is a huge issue. And the city is certainly not in a position to take on every environmental concern. It would be impracticable and feasible, right, cost prohibitive for us to do that. But, based on the changes that have come to us, the first was driven by COVID, right? And when this program first started, I think, the only one or maybe one of two council members that had a lot of questions about this and this company and their for-profit. learning more about them and the problems of textile waste, I became very supportive of this. They needed changes to their business model during COVID, just as so many businesses did. I think that, and I'd be interested in knowing if there's anything more than a nominal amount of city resources that are used for this program. Number one, I think it's a great service for our residents, because many nonprofits will not pick up the things that you enumerated, right? Old bed linens, old towels, clothing that's stained, torn, stuffed animals. And so if you can't donate those, even, driving them to Salvation Army or Vietnam veterans, you're gonna throw them out, because there's nobody else that will take them. They take them and resell what they can, which is not much, and then they have, I think a lot of it goes out to a jobber, and they do some processing, which is the Salvation Army, their undonated stuff, a lot of it, they're things that can't be resold. A lot of it, and I know this from firsthand, ends up in the garbage, and some small percentage gets sold to a jobber who turns it into rags or filling. So I certainly respect and have no problem with consent, but I think this is something that the city is able to do to address a very significant environmental concern at little cost to us, and also a benefit to our residents. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Barr?
Just one more question as the conversation's been going on. Jacob, similar to what I asked earlier, is there even a need for us to have an agreement with them at this point? And they could do this without, we could just I concur with everything Kathleen said, but to Mr. Jolly's concern, if this agreement just went away, couldn't they just continue to provide this? It's just the marketing would be on them?
It would, and I think, and I remember talking about this originally with them a couple of years ago, when we asked about those same questions, even with the curbside collection type thing. And they really were looking for partnerships. They wanted to be in the community and have the leaders of the community involved in this process to help spread the word out to residents that, they're here doing this different type of collection service for the residents at no cost directly to the residents. And that's really what it came through, is a partnership beginning agreement that would be, how it would be collected and how it would be done, and what materials, promotional materials would be sent out, and how that would be disseminated to the public. So that was really what they were looking for, was that
do we have,
partnership.
I'll just be honest, I've not reviewed this in detail. I'm kind of scanning now. Do we have an obligation to market this at this point, or are we just doing that out of the goodness of our hearts because we appreciate the service?
Yeah, we don't, and in the agreement, and if you do get time to read through the specific language, there is nothing that says we must do X, Y, or Z to help promote this to the public. What we do say is we will review any materials that they'd like to provide to us, and we can choose to share those on our platforms like cable TV, website, social media. But there's nothing that says that we must do it, X number of times a year or something like that.
And we're still getting, however nominal it is, we are still getting a little bit of money back as part of this.
Right, and the return on.
You don't even have to tell me what the number is. I know it's small. So.
It's such a small number. It's maybe $150 to $200 a year was kind of what we were looking at anyways when we were starting out with this program a couple of years ago, and it was never really about us as a city making money or being reimbursed for all of our costs. It was about providing this different service, and that's how. And you remember the gentleman that was here from Simple Recycling previously kind of spoke to that. He said, this is really just a return on the efforts that the city's putting in to show that we're giving something back to the community other than just the service. But it was, it was obviously not a money generating program for us.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. McIntyre?
And just one other thing, to the point about using our resources, I do think this is a service to our residents, right? Because a lot of people feel like I do, right? You have all this used stuff that you can't donate, and you hate to throw it out. I think people appreciate, and again, it's really pretty nominal cost for us. I would imagine, if I'm not, I'd be happy to stand corrected, for us to provide that service to our residents. So, thank you. Thanks, Mr. President.
There's no audience. There is one person. Nobody wants to address us, though. So we'll move on to item number 3. You have an approving on the regular. Number 3 is a request to waive the formal bidding process and approve the contract with WEBSTER and GARNER, Inc. from the Department of Public Works to supply propane to the City of Livonia from budgeted funds. Mr. Rushlow?
Thank you again. This is a cooperative bid through Oakland County for supplying liquid propane to the city. This was competitively bid for a 3-year period, which would go from February 1st of this year, 2022, through February 28th of 2025. The pricing that was provided from WEBSTER and GARNER is $0.295 fixed markup per gallon over the market price index. And that's actually almost 25 cents cheaper than what the state of Michigan bid price was set at, which was 54 cents per gallon. The DPW has actually been using the Oakland County bid since 2019, and the current Oakland County bid that was put out mirrors the contract that we're also currently using by the city for purchasing both regular fuel and diesel fuel under the same type of terms, where it's a cost of fuel from the price index with a markup for delivery. So with that, it's our request that council proceed to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute this agreement with WEBSTER and GARNER for the supply of liquid propane and waive our own formal bidding process per ordinance, as there would be no additional advantage to us to do our own competitive bidding, since this is a cooperative bid that was already competitively bid out through Oakland County.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Toy?
I'll ask for approving on consent.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any audience communication? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, a request to amend agreement with HYDROCORP for cross-connection program from the Department of Public Works to modify their program to include repair and any additional required testing for the City of Livonia facilities from budgeted funds, noting Council Resolution 150-21. Mr. Rushlow?
Yes, thank you once again. HYDROCORP is currently under contract with the city for the cross-connection control program, which is inspection services, and they've been doing so for us through a number of different contracts that were both bid out and extended since 2010. This amendment would expand the scope of their work from just inspection to also now include testing and repair of deficiencies found within our own city facilities. There are about 74 locations throughout the city that we are required to go through the same process for cross-connection control. This would continue through the duration of their current contract, which is set to expire on April 30th of 2024. With that, it's our request that council proceed to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an amendment to the agreement with HYDROCORP in an amount not to exceed $14,430 annually from budgeted funds.
Council?
Mr. President,
Mr. Donovan?
I'd like to offer approving on consent if there's no objection from my colleagues.
I see no objections. Just for anybody who might be watching, when you say cross-connections, what exactly are you talking about?
So this relates to the public water supply system that serves businesses, residents, and industrial facilities throughout the city. So the cross connection is really if there is something that's done incorrectly in internal plumbing, where if there's a loss of pressure on our public side of the water main because of a water main break or a issue with the Great Lakes pump station or something, and we lose pressure, there is a potential if there's a cross connection with a contaminated water source, like something from a drain, or even things like soda pop machines in restaurants, you can get a siphoning effect where you can siphon something from a not clean water source that hasn't been treated back through the lines into our public water supply and contaminate the public water supply. So that's the essence of a cross-connection control program, is testing, is inspecting, and then testing, repairing assembly devices that are backflow preventers on all of those devices, like irrigation systems, sprinklers, in restrooms and things like that. There are these cross-control protection, backflow prevention devices. So that's the essence of the program.
You sound like you're regurgitating an answer from your PE exam. I'm glad you got that civil engineering degree. We'll move on to number 5, that's on consent. Request for council to set a date for the purpose of adopting a resolution placing special assessments upon referenced properties whose owners have not paid charges connected with the 2021 sidewalk program, specifically contract 21-G, single lot assessments from the engineering division, noting council resolution 84-21. Mr. Zalinsik.
Good evening, Mr. President. Again, this is just a housekeeping issue for people that may not be able to afford to pay it on a corner lot. So just looking for setting a date, and hopefully the residents will pay, and we'll go from there.
So moved.
Is that for consent, Ms. Toy?
Yes, please.
Okay. Any other engineering wisdom you'd like to impart on us?
Nope, hopefully everyone gets to enjoy the game tonight, 9:20.
Yeah, true. All right, thank you very much. That concludes our agenda for the evening. Council, do you have any announcements? I see none. Any audience communication at all? I see none. Thank you very much. Good evening, Livonia.
8:37?